think Boston is much more of a significant kind of geographic location for Web3 blockchain technology than it gets its due, and I'm grateful to everyone here to beginning to help others recognize that. I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out Chris Swinner. He is, he said the right word when he was talking about blockchain, and as we think about it and thinking about it from a values-centric perspective. Probably my most recursive thought that goes through my head when I'm working through things is Clarke's third law, which is sufficient technology is indistinguishable from magic. And it's just a long way of saying that the end users for these technologies, or maybe a short way of saying, the end users for these technologies generally do not care about what the underlying tech is. And the longer we emphasize and lead with that, rather than creating real value, the longer we'll have trouble with kind of mass adoption. For me, my value that guides me and has guided me through my entire career has been to try to help artists with a capital A create sustainable careers on their own terms. It's what I do. It's what I've been doing since I was 19 years old, releasing records of my own band out of my dorm room. And along the way, I've done things like run the world's largest independent record label and start TuneCore, which has paid out over $1 billion to artists. And then several years ago, I read the Satoshi white paper, like I'm sure everyone else, and I was deeply fascinated, not so much by Bitcoin, but by that substrate layer of blockchain. And I thought to myself, well, if we can actually find a way to disintermediate monetary transactions, the same thing could be true for copyright generally. And I'm a copyright attorney, and so I've seen the challenges that not only musicians have, but people outside of the music industry face when they try to iterate in the music space because of the challenges around copyright. Unfortunately, the people that tend to get harmed the most by those challenges are the artists. And the Web 2 era will go down in history as the era in which the platforms realized that they didn't need to make anything, but all they really needed to do was harvest the work of others and then organize it, right? Which in and of itself isn't a bad thing, right? YouTube harvested the work of videographers or amateur videographers. Instagram harvests the work of photographers. Twitter harvests the thoughts. Uber harvests the cars, all of these things. And so the kind of colloquial term for that became the gig economy. But if you think back in terms of what gig meant pre what we now think of the gig economy, you would remember that if someone said to you, oh, I have a gig, you'd realize, oh, they probably either had a music gig or an acting gig. It didn't mean that you were going to go deliver groceries or be a TaskRabbit. And I've long written about how music is sort of a canary in a coal mine, as goes the music industry, and as goes how we treat musicians, so goes the world, right? And so if you look at this kind of gig economy that we find ourselves in, what's happened is that almost all industries are now treating their employees or their stakeholders the way the music world or the world treated gig artists. And when you unpack that, you realize that the gig economy is not a great one. It's one where there's little to no social safety net, little to no kind of retirement funding, little to no time off, little to no health insurance, right? Musicians and artists generally have faced that from the start. Now everyone is, right? The difference again is that with musicians and creators, there's at least that music reward that happens. One of my favorite artists is the great artist Lucinda Williams, who is, objectively a fine artist and poet and everything else, and she's struggling right now. But I was real close with her guitar player, and Lucinda, if you know her at all, she's not an easy person to kind of work with, as many geniuses aren't. And so I asked Bo, I was like, the guitar player, I was like, man, how do you deal with being on the road? Like, it must be so challenging. He said, it is, but that hour and a half on stage, that musical reward makes up for it all. And I think all of us understand that to a degree. But in order for that to continue, we need sustainability, right? And so when we talk, as Chris did, about values, sustainability is a big one. I chose to hitch my wagon to Algorand because Silvio Macaulay invented a system there that is sustainable from an environmental standpoint, but also sustainable because we can do transactions quickly and cheaply. So I'm honored to be up here with colleagues that are working in that same environment. The topic of this talk here is disrupting the music industry with Web3. Well, we all know that with disruption comes opportunity, but really it also comes with responsibility. And my great fear and what I've been fighting for forever is making sure that Web3 doesn't just become another version of Web2, right? We can argue about the merge that happened with ETH recently, but we can't argue with the fact that now 46% of the transactions that are being validated are being done by 2 people or 2 consortiums. That's not decentralized by any objective standard. So we are at risk at just building a Web3 that's verticalized like Web2. But we have to understand the value as to why we don't want to do that. And the value needs to be that these creators need to have their self-sovereign identity with respect to their data. They need to be valued more than a cog in a machine that people can build enterprise value on. So with that long spiel ahead, I want to talk about how we disrupt, so to speak, but I also want to talk about how we rebuild in a more sustainable way. So I'd like our panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into it. Margaret?
Yeah, thanks, George. If you haven't heard George speak before, it's clear that he's a professor. I love the lead-ins, too. So hey, everyone, I'm Margaret. I'm with Dequency. We are a decentralized sync licensing marketplace built on Algorand, proudly. And exactly, addressing some of the issues that George outlined is that sync licensing is a really complex, interesting slice of the music industry. And, I like to say it's fraught with intermediaries and it's very tangled and hard to understand. So especially if you're an artist trying to navigate that. So we really see ourselves as a tool that artists can have in their tool belt to, as George says, create a sustainable career on their own terms and really, take control over how their music is used and, see the output immediately when they're interfacing with this tool. So it's, we're really passionate about giving artists more options than were traditionally available through the music industry. And something that, I go back actually to a lecture of yours that I think about often where it was like, the question was something like, who here thinks that, labels and like traditional music industry is totally exploitative and like awful and everyone knows the stories. And it's like, yeah, we've all heard about how people, especially people of color and women, have been screwed over by the music industry forever and ever. And then it's like, but how many of you, if offered, the chance to sign with a big label today, would do it? And everyone's like, yeah, let's go, exploit me. So we're hoping that, what we can do is build tools so that people don't have to, make that deal and sign their name on the devil's dotted line. Keely will hate that I said that, but really, like, it doesn't need to be that way. We have other opportunities, and that's why when we talk about crypto and the things it enables, it's not crypto for crypto's sake. It's a means to an end at providing more opportunity to more people, especially artists. Like, your art is not a commodity. It is a way for you to make a living. So we want to enable that, and we believe that if we can do that well, the world will be a better place filled with more art. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, great, excellent. We got a lot of overlap at the Napster side. So I'm Brandon Wolf. I'm the interim CTO at Napster. I'm technically paid by Algorand. I work at Algorand as part of the acquisition. I've been moved in as CTO. I think the same thing at Napster. We look at the way the labels are. They're a big part of our ecosystem, right? They're a big part of we've got multi-million song catalogs, and we're a digital streamer, just on the Spotify, iTunes, that kind of stage. But we don't look at them as the enemy. We look at it as an option, and freedom is choice. So artists have if that's the way you want to go, if you want to raise your hand and be exploited, then that should be your choice, and you can go that route. But we're also going to offer a different way in that you can do a lot of your music can be I don't want to say crowdfunded, but it is to the point where it's community driven. And the mission at Napster, not just of what we do and how we do it, but why we do it, is for the love of music. We want to bring artists and fans together. That's really what we're about. So as we're moving into Web3 now with Napster, taking it from Web2, it's a 22-year-old technology platform that we're moving into Web3. We're going to start opening up a lot of those avenues, exploring the usage of wallets and like how that becomes part of your actual identity that you own, and not some large major mega corporation that sells it and resells it. You can take that with you and own it with you. We really take those things seriously. And so there's a lot of utility we want to add to it, because you talked about adding value to, and as was brought up earlier, that's something that we want to do at Napster too. It can't just be a bunch of fluff and a bunch of buildup of just things that everybody else is doing. So glad to hear that you're on the same boat with this. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Thanks, Margaret. So Margaret, maybe talk a little bit about, you used the keyword sort of disintermediation. I've always said that like licensing music into film in 2022 is sort of analogous to booking travel in 1975 or something. There's no real systems. You have to know a person, you call, phone, and I own a publishing company, a traditional one, so I've seen it in real life. But like, so what is Dequency's approach to actually disintermediate or just generally create efficiencies? And you can intersperse Web3 or just your values or whatever. Like, again, I don't know that this needs to be a talk so much about, well, if you do a social token, it
Right.
needs to be more about, well, okay, we know what the current state is. We know there's a desired state. How are you helping move the ball to that desired state?
Absolutely. So I think when I first learned about, what you and Keely were building at Dequency before it was, really a thing.
And I suppose in transparency, so it doesn't come back to bite me, I'm a co-founder of Dequency, co-wrote the white paper, et cetera. I'm not, Keely Halderman is the CEO, but just in transparency, I obviously have skin in the game with regards to Dequency.
Yes, true. So the thing that fascinated me about this is that, like, my background before, I really dove in full time into the whole crypto world is that I was just, like anyone else, just like a dumbass retail trader. I was like, token go up, that's so cool. And then I was like, okay, what is the underlying technology? Why is this special? Why is this cool? And when, Keatley was telling me about, similar to the way that he pitched it to me a year ago was similar to the way that, Bitcoin removes the need for a centralized bank to facilitate transactions. This is what I want to do for sync licensing. This is what I want to do, for music licensing, because it's the same thing. When you have that intermediary, it takes a really long time for people to get paid. There are so many different rights holders who all need to negotiate, and it's something that takes a very long time. It's expensive. Often, if I'm an artist and I get a cool sync placement, I'm so excited someone's gonna pay me to put my music in a show on the CW, I'm headed to the top. And then by the time everyone's taken their cut, you have this really sad check and you're like, all right, maybe next time, exposure, I'll eat it for dinner. So he was thinking, okay, if we can make these transactions more peer-to-peer, not only can they be faster, more efficient, but artists can retain, a greater percentage of their earnings. And when they do that, and when it's possible to make a living off of your art, you can make a living off of your art and you can put more into it. And that's really cool. And so, I saw that as it was presented to me at the time as, analogous to the thing that made, digital assets in general really exciting. And so I love the application, the real world application, and taking it back to that theme of today, like crypto, blockchain, Web3, whatever, is only as exciting as its real world application. I don't care that it's blockchain. It's not cool because it's blockchain for blockchain's sake. It's cool because we're adding real value to real people's lives. And so, only as far as you can do that is as far as I care. And, that's what we're trying to do. So just to kind of overarching, how does Dequency work and how do I think, a lot of these systems will work kind of on a, just broad contours. An artist or a rights holder can upload their music to the marketplace. and then someone can connect their Algorand wallet now, but hopefully, at some point it will be credit card, whatever you want, and they can purchase a license directly, and right now it's through an atomic swap. There will be more complexity as more rights holders are added, and it's just a one-to-one transfer. And once I do that, I've essentially minted the sync license as an NFT. So that's another really cool use for an NFT, whereas it's like, it doesn't just need to be like a JPEG of a weird anthropomorphic animal. No offense if you love your anthropomorphic animals, I hate them. I like a lot of NFTs, I just think a lot of them are creepy. So, it's significant that it's, immutable and on-chain because it's, it's a legal document, and it's one that we're able to, create instantaneously, and it's for, in this case, NFT and metaverse sync licenses in particular, which is really novel, and I don't think anyone else is doing it exactly that way. But we're able to, say I'm a music rights holder and, Brandon wants to license my music for something, we could do this deal over dinner, and it can be done, and the money is in my wallet, by the time we get dessert. So I think that that's really exciting. It's very novel, and I would love to see more industry pushing that way towards faster payments, disintermediation. It's a lot of fun.
So thank you. So maybe speak to that, Brandon, faster payments, disintermediation, just high level, what is Napster thinking about in terms of those things? And then I want to dive deeper on some specifics, but if you want to kind of build off of that.
I think starting at the front end, we're going to use NFTs for things like subscriptions. When you have a subscription to Napster, you'll hold that in your wallet. We'll also be offering a lifetime subscription that's going to be rewarded through a whitelist Genesis minting that we're going to do. So on the front end, that's going to allow for easier tracking of subscription memberships as they're paying for it. Now on the backside, one of the problems that's in the industry now is the royalty payouts, and this could be for labels or directly to artists or even into independents. And what that means is, as a streamer, as we're streaming the music to users, we're reporting back that activity, those metrics, back to the labels or to the artists, and saying, this is how much your song was streamed and how long it was and who it was streamed to and what demographic. And oh, by the way, this is how much we're paying you for that. Now that's a really upside down model if you think about it. Basically, it's not even a gentleman's agreement, it's a trust me bro agreement that we hope that you are giving us the right data and then the right money. If we can start to leverage the chain to hold that information, it's immutable, it's fast, it's near real time, especially on Algorand, and the payouts can also be in real time, near real time, I should say. So that's something that we're exploring now down the road as we get into how we mint the music NFTs, and then the streaming is attached to that so that there's a touch point to the NFT. And as we're broadcasting that, and it doesn't even have to be on our platform, it could be on Spotify, it could be on anywhere that wants to leverage this as we get to layer 2. And then the royalties are all done on chain so that labels can, or independent artists or unsigned artists can go and look exactly at how much it's being done and what the actual numbers are, and they can get paid almost in real time. So that's the expediency we're looking for.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. I'm kind of breaking one of my rules because historically, recently, I won't do talks or panels without an artist kind of sitting beside on the panel. I'll have to play the role of the artist here, so forgive me, but I am a guitar player for a million years, still playing bands, obviously in live and settings and all that. Obviously, I'm not making my living doing it, but I also teach at Berkeley and sit and talk to these students, so I understand their sensitivity. So I'm going to kind of, as best I can, play the proxy of the artist here, right? And so, to both of you, whoever wants to take it, the general viewpoint of the artist is at this point, I'm never going to make any money off the DSPs, right? And by DSPs, if you don't know, that's the streaming services, the Spotifys of the world or whatever. The promise of, and Margaret alluded to this, the promise of the DSPs historically has been, well, you may not make a lot of money off of us, but we'll provide you exposure that you can then monetize through touring, merchandise, whatever. Even pre-COVID, that never worked, right? The revenue that artists were getting from touring was not correlated with streams. It's a nice idea that didn't come to pass. So, if in fact we all, and I think we do, agree that one of the values is kind of artistic sustainability, there are really two ways to do that, right? One is through paying them. For a lot of reasons, the idea, and disabuse me if you want, but the idea that Napster or any of the other DSPs is going to significantly increase the direct payment out to the labels is a non-starter. Not because Napster or others might not want to, but a lot of these royalties are set by your Congress people. And you can puzzle that one out at the polling places, I suppose. But so then we're left with, well, we have to expand the opportunities for revenue generation, and I think Web3 is about the best opportunity we've had forever. And second to that, one of the things that is always left out of the equation when you think about value creation and how artists sort of spread the word, you look at the value chain and you look at labels, you look at publishers, you look at publicists, you look at managers, you look at booking agents, all through the ecosystem, right? And they are the ones that are historically associated with getting an artist known. And I would ask all of you all to kind of answer in your heads, if you think about your favorite artist, where did you discover that artist? And the answer for most people is a friend told me about him, her, or them, right? And yet those fans have not only been pushed out of the equation, but in most DSPs, the fans curate the playlist, pay for the privilege to do that. In other words, you pay Spotify X dollars a month, you make a playlist, Spotify goes, thanks, we'll take that and have it tune our algorithm. That information never makes it to the artists themselves. They own the relationships. And so I created a project called The Song That Owns Itself, which allows people to kind of see the value chain. But speak to either of those things, the payment, direct payment, or the opportunities for sustainability, both from a Napster standpoint or a Dequency standpoint.
Well, I mean, this is even beyond a Dequency standpoint, but what you were talking about got me to thinking, most of the time when we're interfacing with an artist, it is through a streaming service where artists are, paid essentially in exposure. And something that I would love to see in the future, Napster, hopefully, is, while you're there and while you're captured on that platform, ways to translate that engagement and that love and the passion and excitement for a new artist into valuable and real streams of monetization for the artist beyond just, streaming the song over and over and over until they get paid a couple pennies from you, right? So I think that fan engagement and monetizing it in a significant way, like on the same platform so we don't get that fall off, is going to be really interesting for artists and fans alike. That's something I would love to see.
Duly noted, yeah, and I think that's where we would like to get to. It's definitely in line with that. The social engagement is a big part of our Web3 strategy too, having that collaboration amongst users, because you're right, it does come from your friends, it comes from someone that you know. There's also the algorithmic side of it, which we're very heavily invested in too. As you use like a Pandora model, you plug in a few songs that you do like, and it will recommend things based on genre and intensity and aggression and whatever you're into at that time to come up with those things too. We want to build that into it as well. The streaming part of it is just the mechanical vehicle by which it travels. Before it was MP3s, and then it was CDs and cassettes, and et cetera, et cetera. That's just our norm of media distribution now. I don't know what that's going to be in the future, but that's what we're trying to build this on top of, because that is the way that things are distributed now. Now, in terms of the payout and like how that can be disrupted, because you're right, some of those are already preset, and we just have to fall within line with those rules. When it comes to unsigned artists, UGC, user-generated content that's being added, people can kind of make their own, similar to the Stowy model that you've done. So we're looking into those things in terms of like how we can live side by side with that pre-existing model and expand out to be something that's a little different.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, and I want to be, again, transparent. One of the reasons that I identified Napster as something that would be a good fit for Algorand or Web3 was because of those existing licenses, right? With the majors, if you think about the challenges, the kind of cold start problem of, well, I'm going to do a Web3 music streaming and platform, and they exist, but and some of the features are fantastic, but what they don't have is kind of network effect because they don't have catalog, right? Yeah. And so it's a non-starter currently, at least, because the majors and the incumbents, they're doing what I think they historically do, and you can view that as either kind of classic innovator's dilemma or just really smart business where, no, we'll just sit and wait. This will accrue benefit in time anyway. Why would we bother? It doesn't much matter. They're not going to affirmatively go out and do deals. So you have to kind of grab them in existence. And I think it was very wise to do that deal with Napster, if for no reason than that. I think there are many other reasons. I also don't think it's a zero-sum relationship. In other words, I think it's a very positive sum one. And this is the maturation of George, because historically through my career, it's been like, well, you have to just take a flamethrower to the existing industry and build on top of it. Maybe, but I'd like to think that there can be this equilibrium. Eventually, the major rights holders are going to get their due. To your point, there's this whole tranche, and an increasingly large one, of independent artists that are unfettered and can go, well, I'd like to make different types of deals. How are you thinking about that, if at all? Like, how do you build that equilibrium in?
Well, we want to first, one thing we're going to be offering is what's called the Artist Toolkit, so where they can start to build those, similar to what you're doing with building their contracts into the platform, and they can start to have a little bit more control over that. As part of a music NFT, I may want the distribution to go to my producer, to my writer, to my promoter, et cetera.
Yes, Stowy, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, same model. But having that toolkit available for them, so again, it follows that paradigm of they don't really know they're using Web3, they're just using an easier means to do their job.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Margaret, do you want to talk about that? I mean, you have to deal with, on one hand, these incumbents, and it's probably on the buy side, right? Like, I think the genius of Dequency is we saw what Starbucks did the other day, and you see an increasing number of big, huge corporations going, well, we're going to embrace Web3. I think Starbucks is actually doing it in a very thoughtful way. Others are sort of bumbling into it. But one way or the other, and I don't want to get in the weeds on copyright, but just so everybody knows, like, licensing a song, it's almost never a single rights holder with another buyer. So if you think about, like, I Will Always Love You, performed by Whitney Houston, that was written by Dolly Parton, right? And so if you want to license that song, you have to make deals with Dolly Parton's camp, with Arista Records camp, potentially with Whitney Houston's estate, and that's a relatively simple one. If you want to license a Beyonce track, you have to deal with sometimes up to 30 or 40 different writers, right? And the buyers on that, they don't care. You know what I mean? They just want the track, and they're willing to pay. But it's just trying to lock down all these things. So on one hand, Dequency's success is somewhat predicated on making deals with big corporations, people getting into the metaverse, NFTs, whatever. And on the other hand, balancing the need of these individual artists that are like, hey, I want to play too. How do you satisfy both masters in a positive sum manner?
Let me know. Something that I think is fascinating about this, and just to be clear, right now at Dequency, we're dealing with independent artists who own their rights, master it, and publishing, which makes it really easy. But inevitably, we will move into more complex and sophisticated rights holders. And when someone teaches you a word and then you just like use it all the time? This is me. Chris, you taught me the concept of composable royalties routing. And this is what I think will be really like the breakthrough here, which is that more sophisticated rights holders can set up that royalties environment in a way that once the deal is struck, these rights holders are paid out based on how they have allocated the rights for that song. So if you're one of the 30 writers on Beyonce's song "Single Ladies," that contract hits, and I'm oversimplifying it, but then it's automatically paid out to you in the proportion that you've already predetermined. So that's the future that I would like to see, and I think that's really exciting too, because if we are composing these contracts, now maybe there's a cut for fans. There's the ability for a fan to receive a cut for curation, right? So if I'm on Napster and I am, I'm streaming my favorite new song, my favorite artist, maybe there's a future in which I can stake against that artist's success in some way. Like, I think that's really cool. We've outlined a suggestion for that in Dequency's light paper, which is published. Check out the proof of taste protocol. Talk to me about proof of taste. But decentralized curation is so cool, because when you think about the body of work that exists online, it is massive, and it's just, there's so much shit. There's so many good, amazing things, but there's a lot of shit. So if you can be the person to help navigate that, and if you think that you are a tastemaker, there's an opportunity for you not only to elevate those amazing artists, but also to like make a little money doing it, which is exciting. And that's also something that is, you know, made simple and accessible by this Web3 tech, these Web3 tools.
Yeah, I mean, my vision for Napster, kind of playing off of that, to your point, was not necessarily like a pecuniary or financial reward for a curator. In other words, if I go and curate something, the vision I always had was, well, I get a token, right? And this is a Stowy model. And then that token is something that I can then redeem for maybe like an AMA with an artist I love. Because again, being proxy for the artist, my fans, they don't, if they're net promoting, in other words, if they're telling their friends about music I love, they don't want money from that gesture, right? They want to get closer to the band, right? They want to get something they can't get, a demo, a live track, etc. And you mentioned an artist toolkit. I think that there needs to be a fan toolkit too, right? Like the thing that gets lost through a lot of this is like the customers. My dishwasher broke, right? Like I have no fucking idea how my dishwasher works, right? Nor should I. I just call someone and say, make this work. It's the same thing with a fan. Like we can't expect a fan to go, I don't know how, all I know is that I pay X numbers of dollars a month and I literally have all the music I could ever want. There is cognitive dissonance in the sense of, I know my artists are kind of struggling. So like when you say artist toolkit, is there thought also on kind of the fan engagement, you know, as well?
Yeah, part of our mission is bringing the artists and fans together, and we're exploring things like rewards for curation so that you can earn as you're doing those, and you can build status within that particular group. We do see the organic formulation of social circles around genres, around artists, around venues and events that are going on. And so I think that will be part of it, but also to the fan. I mean, having just that direct access to either it's an AMA, or what we're looking at also is maybe dabbling in the metaverse too. So we've been looking at, you know, there's been a lot that's been going on in Decentraland and Roblox and some of these meta galaxies that are starting to form in terms of artists doing a lot of promotional work out there and integrating with their own fans in a much more direct way than just through, you know, a stage and a crowd. And so we're looking to see how Napster can, you know, be a part of that and really be that kind of springboard of getting that music in there and integrations. So.
And you may not be, you know, in your seat the right person to ask this, but I'll ask it anyway. But you know, Napster, again, why it just seemed to me like such a logical kind of resurrection was because of it. Like if you think about Napster, it wasn't just the first kind of like pirate music streaming service. In 1999, it was truly the first decentralized peer-to-peer social network.
That's right.
Right? I mean, if you know anything about your history, Friendster predated MySpace and Facebook. Well, Friendster called itself Friendster because they were playing off the Napster idea. So there is this institutional history of really bringing the joy back to music discovery, which has been completely obliterated in the ensuing years. Also, Napster brought back the joy of music sharing, right? I'm old enough to remember the days of sitting in a dorm room and just plucking records out and each person put it on, right? That's kind of in a skeuomorphic way what Napster did. So there's this at least this ethos, and to your point, it's 20 years old, it's been through a billion different owners. Yeah. But is there any concept of like, well, maybe there was some value that's embedded into the DNA that's maybe finally now technologically able to you know, kind of emerge in a real way?
I think so, yeah. I think not only reputation-wise, because yeah, it is the OG disruptor. I mean, we went from CDs at the time to MP3. So I mean, I talk about how we won that war. We may have lost some of the legal battles along the way. We did it in a little bit of subversive way, but we won the war because no one buys CDs anymore. No one goes to Tower Records anymore. And I think that is embedded in the DNA as part of the culture that we have at Napster. That is, we want to be disruptive. We don't look at the other DSPs as our North Star. We look at how we can actually make an effective change in it. So I mean, it's built into the culture, it's built into the tech, and now with Web3, it gives us a much broader avenue.
Yeah, amazing. So we need to wrap up. I'd love you just to kind of give a closing statement about Dequency, your vision, how people here who are obviously true believers, thank you all for braving this weather and being here. You know, we all have to, and Chris alluded to it as well, like the beautiful thing that I've noticed about Web3 versus Web2 is there is a general bias, and I know there's a lot of pissing on chains and all that stuff, but a general bias towards let's help each other. And I hope we can keep that sense. Obviously, we all believe in that. But so what should people know about Dequency and how they can kind of get involved, and last words generally?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much I can tell you that I haven't already said. Follow us on Twitter to stay updated. I shitpost occasionally, so it'll be a good time. And if I can leave you with anything, it's, when you're at home and you're settled down, go and spend some time listening to music. Just close your tabs and reconnect, listen to an album front to back. I think that so much of that is lost because of the immediacy of music all the time. And it's really that's the point of all of this, is that we want to create an environment where art can thrive and be shared and we can recapture some of that joy. So that's what I'll ask, actually. Listen to an album front to back.
That's a good ask.
Yeah, I'll just say plug just Napster, the Twitter feed. They're doing feeds right now as I'm talking, so they're watching and posting. We have a Discord, so come join in some more real-time discussions. We're talking about the platform. We're getting ideas. We want to make this as successful as possible for our users. So, but yeah, thank you both. Great to be up here.
Thank you.
Wait, no.
So it's not now. I've got to say something really fucking profound right now.
No pressure.
Hang on. Well, first off, thank you both so very much. I would just beg all of you who are building in any type of art, anything that touches artists, avoid the Dunning-Kruger trap, right? Avoid the idea that because you are a wonderful, brilliant technologist or wonderful, brilliant investor or wonderful, brilliant entrepreneur in other fields, that you are going to fix art without having an artist having a seat at the table. I'm begging you not to do that, right? Because we will get back to just a clusterfuck of Web 2, and we've got this opportunity, but we've got to give artists seats at the table and self-sovereign identity, and do not build tools for artists without artists having a seat at the table. Thank you very much.